Refresh your bathroom with big savings at Lowe's. Reimagine your bathroom with up to 40% off select faucets during our Bath Savings event. Need it today? Order by 2 p.m. for same-day delivery by 8 p.m. Shop for your bathroom refresh at Lowe's. We help, you save. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Same-day delivery on eligible in-stock items, subject to availability. Fees vary. Visit Lowes.com/same-day delivery for full terms.
A warm from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ryan McIntire, who does such excellent work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We're going to talk about the little bit of wobbliness that we've seen out of some of the top teams in all of college basketball, and if that says a little bit more about some of these Tier 2 teams. These teams are just outside the top 5, but are like top 10, top 15 teams, and how feisty they are going to be able to be. We're going to take a look at the landscape of the Big 12, and we're going to discuss the fact that we have a very interesting circumstance in college basketball right now where if you're handicapping the game, you probably want to sell out a little bit more for these Saturdays, and you have to work ahead to be able to get, shall we say, prepared for those Saturdays and utilize a day like today on Monday where there's not as many games as a little bit of catch-up. So we're going to be discussing that and so much more in the final segment. I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUnit_81. Keep them on the RCM. They mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Illinois Fighting Illini go on the road and they get the job done as a very slim underdog, 75-69. As for Illinois, they did a very rock-solid job in terms of taking care of the ball against an Iowa team that's been great at generating turnovers. Now, Iowa still wins the turnover battle 12-8, but typically Iowa generating a lot more turnovers, and Iowa just not able to get the shots to drop from 3. 9 of 29 from three-point range. You had Tavion Banks actually be the top scorer off the bench with 16 points, and for Illinois, Keaton Wagler, he's really stepped up for the team, 19 points, 4 of 7 from three-point range. For Illinois, they win the rebound battle 38-31. Both teams solid at the free throw line. Not a lot of free throws to be had here. As for Iowa, 6-6 as the charity stripe. Illinois, 9 of 11. But Iowa, they just are unable to match up on the boards. And for Illinois, they utilize that, and they were able to get the job done. Outside of that, Central Florida was the only other ranked team that was in action on Sunday, but you had some nice smaller fare as the rough season for Memphis continues, 89-78. Florida Atlantic, they're able to go out there and they're able to get the job done, and you did have some of the more interesting teams in college basketball, trend-wise, in terms of good/bad cover teams in action on this Sunday, as well as with Memphis for this non-cover for them. They now find themselves against the spread at 9-6. They've actually been able to cover quite a few spreads, even though this has been a little bit of a, shall we say, less than savory season for them. But in this one for Florida Atlantic, they did a nice job in terms of just being able to win that battle down low, 46-29. They win the rebound battle. Memphis does go 12 of 28 from 3. Heated up a little bit there as Doug McDaniel had 12 points and Aaron Bradshaw 21 points, but they do lose the battle on the glass big time. And for Florida Atlantic, they did a nice job being able to knife the ball down low as you had all but one of your starters be able to score double figures. Cannon Carlisle, he was able to go off for 17 points, so a good win for Florida Atlantic there, and this was a solid win for Detroit. They take down Cleveland State, this by a kind of 94-84, and Cleveland State has been one of those, shall we say, lesser teams against the spread in all of college basketball. They are now 6-9 against the spread, and for this Detroit team, they've been a nice little bit of a pleasant surprise as the three-point shooting for them has been rather rough this season, but they found it on this day at 10 of 22 from three-point range. You had 19 points outside their spread, and for Cleveland State, they go 15 of 33 from 3. Jaden Lipscomb, 9 of 16 from three-point range. Problem was they lost the rebound battle 49-27, and they lose the turnover battle by kind of 16-14. So that was a little bit less than tremendous. IU Indy has actually been one of your better under teams in all of college basketball. We saw an initial shock with them playing those very harebrained scoring games to begin the season, but they just have not been a fruitful team against the spread. They're now 6-11 against the spread. They completely melt down against UW-Milwaukee. They finally play an over for you, as for IU Indy, they're up to 5 overs to 12 unders, but on this day for UW-Milwaukee, they do find a way to be able to persevere and be able to cover this game late. They win 95-83 as they were playing with Danilo Janovic, their top rebounder, but for UW-Milwaukee, they go 9-24 from 3, win the rebound battle 37-24, and for IU Indy, they win the turnover battle 12-9, but they're not generating the same amount of turnovers that they did towards the beginning part of the season, and Milwaukee was able to go 16 of 25 at the free throw line with Amar Ulyagard being able to give the team 25 points. Oakland has been a really good over team thus far this season. For the Grizzlies of Oakland, 13 overs to 4 unders, and for Oakland, their game got a little bit overwhelming against Wright State, but that's because Wright State was doing all the damage. 94-84, Wright State, they go on the road, they get the job done as Wright State 9 of 18 from 3-point range, and this has been a Wright State team that has been pretty solid against the spread themselves this season, and for Oakland, it's been a relatively good season for them thus far, but certainly the defense is leaving something to be desired for this Detroit team, by the way. Getting back to them, they're now 9-4 against the spread. Wright State is 10-6 against the spread, and Oakland, they now fall to 10-7 with this loss, but for Oakland, you had 30 points out of Brody Robinson, just needed a little bit more there, and Solomon Coughlin for Wright State, he was able to supply the team with 27 points out there in the Metro Atlantic, the MAC with 2 A's. We've seen a lot of intriguing teams, to say the least, as far as the season, and Ryder just continues their miserable season. 3-9-2 against the spread thus far this season, and they get lambasted by Marist, 71-49. The final is for this Marist Foxes bunches. It's not like they were a flamethrower from 3. 8-21 is relatively solid. Justin Menard was able to give the team 15 points, but for Ryder, they went 1 of 6 from 3, 12 of 21 at the free throw line. They lose the rebound battle 40-30. They lose the turnover battle 12-9. Just absolutely lambasted in this game. And Marist now 8-5-1 against the spread. Iona is 11-7 against the spread. They've been rock solid. They take down Canisius by a count of 74-48. And Merrimack was actually your top team in terms of just sheer record in the Metro Atlantic going into the day. St. Peter's was able to get a nice win and cover against them, so that was helpful for the old Peacocks. And you did see Siena go to 10-7 against the spread. They were able to do a nice job dominating their game against Mount St. Mary's, 67-50 the finals. Mount St. Mary's just can't stop turning the ball over. They lose the turnover battle 15-8 in this one, and they go just 6 of 27 from 3-point range. And just if you're looking at the totals in terms of the Metro Atlantic, you've got a lot of slow and controlled teams, and right now you've got Canisius 11 unders to 4 overs, Ryder 10 unders to 4 overs, Siena 12 unders to 5 overs, Mount St. Mary's 11 unders to 6 overs, Merrimack 12 unders to 6 overs, St. Peter's 8 unders to 5 overs. The lone team that has the same amount of overs to unders right now is Fairfield at 8-8. So yeah, it's been very much an under conference thus far this season, to say the least. You saw Central Florida just eke one out against Cincinnati, 73-72 the final. That's another under for Cincinnati, as Cincinnati has been looking to push a lot of tempo, but just hasn't worked out for them, and they lose this game because they go 3 of 19 from 3-point range. And for Central Florida, they shoot 58% from the floor. Themis Folks, he was able to come up big, only 6 points, but how about 12 assists for him? For Central Florida, they do lose the turnover battle 14-7, but for Cincinnati, they go 5 of 8 at the free throw line. When you lose a game by 1, that's rough, though. Mustafa team moves with Central Florida last season, 24 points, 5 rebounds against his old team, so he was able to do a pretty rock solid job there. You also had yourself a little bit of interesting fare with regards to the UAB versus East Carolina game. East Carolina has not been great as far as this season, but they were able to hold in their UAB in overtime. They get an 87-85 win over East Carolina. East Carolina 8 of 22 from 3. A nice come up there for UAB. They had Jacob Meyer on their side, though, 29 big points. UAB actually loses a rebound battle 47-38, but they win the turnover battle 17-8, so they do find a way to be able to stave things off and not completely blow it there. For Charlotte, they get a nice road win 74-73 over Rice, as it's been very interesting out there in the American as well. If you're looking at just the totals in this conference, Tulsa has been a flamethrower to the over, and you saw North Texas and Wichita State do battle. They have been 2 very good under teams thus far, especially North Texas. They have played 10 unders to 5 overs. This was one of the overs, as this was the first game in a road/neutral venue that North Texas was able to exceed 64 points. They lose 78-67, so no cover there. As for Wichita State, 5 of 11 from 3-point range. Wichita State won the rebound battle 39-31, but did lose the turnover battle 18-12. North Texas actually a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from them, just not getting a lot going on offense. 3 of 10 from 3-point range sadly was not overly awful for them. So that was a fun and interesting game that we saw on Sunday. And you also saw a little bit of A-10 play as St. Joe's, they go on the road, they take down the itsy bitsy Spiders of Richmond, this by a count of 67-65. And for this Richmond team, they've actually been a pretty solid team against the spread. They now fall to 8-8, and for St. Joe's, they go to 5-10 against the spread with this win. It's been a pretty miserable season for them, but St. Joe's, who has really struggled from three, 10-31 from the outside with Derek Simpson going 5-9 from three, 19 points, 13 rebounds, and for Richmond, they go 10-25 from three-point range in this one. They actually shoot 34% from the floor. They were 12 for 39 on their two-point shot, so not able to execute inside. They lose the rebound battle 42-37, and they win the turnover battle. Richmond does 11-7, but losing that rebound battle, not being able to punch it in inside, that was very costly to them. And then it's been a rough year for Rutgers against the spread. They are now 5-11 against the spread, but got the job done on Sunday, 77-75 in overtime. For Rutgers, Tariq Francis off the bench, 30 big points, and Nick Martinelli did his part for Northwestern, 34 points, 12 rebounds, but Northwestern loses the rebound battle 47-40, and they've got nobody but themselves to blame for this loss. They went 17 out of 29 at the free throw line. That is just simply not going to cut it, and when you lose by 2, that's rough to say the least. And then Washington, they were able to get a win and cover to be able to wrap up the day against the Ohio State University. As for Zoom Diallo, he zoomed his way to being able to supply 22 points in this one. Hans Steinbach, just a few rebounds short of a double-double, but he gets 20-plus points in this one for Washington. Just 6 of 18 from three-point range, but with about 30 seconds remaining, they were 17 of 19 at the free throw line. They do lose a rebound battle in this game by 10, but for Ohio State, they go just 7 of 21 from three-point range. They were able to have Bruce Thornton go off for 26-plus points, and Amari Bynum, he was able to chip in 20-plus, but for Washington, nice quality winner there. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, we have seen a lot of unders over the last 7 days, as right now the under rate right around about 50.5%, 166 overs to 169 unders, and more than the unders, we have seen the underdogs come through. How about the underdog hitting at a little bit under 53.5%, 179 and 157 against the spread over the last 7 days. And if you're looking at the entirety of the season, underdogs hitting at a little bit over 50.5%, 1,404, 1,369, with the unders hitting at about 50.3%, 1,379 overs, 1,394 unders, and a few pushes along the way. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we're getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we chat it up with our good friend Ryan McIntire of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Revitalize your bathroom with big savings at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select vanities and free delivery during our bath savings event. Plus, get up to 40% off select shower heads. No matter what style you're looking for, we've got you covered. Shop for your bathroom refresh at Lowe's. We help, you save. While supplies last, selection varies by location.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. back to MLB Las Vegas for Cookman Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ryan McIntire aboard. He does a tremendous job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he is very much locked in on that, and on top of that, he does a great job on the college football front, and we do have ourselves a fun title game. He's going to be doing a great job breaking that down. He and Kobe Dan do a tremendous job over at the College Experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, night in, night out, looking at every game every day. And you're able to follow him on Twitter, @checks at Moneyline_Max, spelled MAC. And Ryan, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, appreciate you having me. Wild day in college hoops.
Yep, certainly. It was a very wild Saturday. And Ryan, right now, with regards to college basketball, just how do you take a look at the hierarchy of the sport? Because I thought that going into this past week that we had a very clear top three with Arizona, Iowa State, along with Michigan, but Michigan had that tight game against Penn State. They lose outright to Wisconsin on Saturday. Iowa State, they get the job done, but they were pushed by Oklahoma State. Meanwhile, it feels like Arizona's really been that steady team that, for lack of a better term, they're the one team that really hasn't gotten a massive scare yet.
Yeah, they really haven't. Honestly, I'm trying to think maybe the UConn game was their biggest scare, but I mean, Arizona's been the most battle-tested and has the best resume. Michigan, not going 40-0 like some people in the media suggested. Newsflash, everybody, nobody's going 40-0. It's too hard in college basketball. Too many tough road games. There's too many good teams and coaches. But yeah, Michigan's hit a little bit of a wall here. But I think it's kind of good to hit a wall in January, to be honest. And then if you can recatch that mojo in late February, March, kind of like UConn did in their first natty or Florida did last year, I think it could be a good thing.
Yep, and I do think that it's interesting because Nebraska and Vanderbilt are trying to say, hey, we have a chance to be able to go 40-0, and I feel like the Tier 2 teams are really starting to rise up. Now, we've seen a little bit of fall with a team like Kansas losing to your West Virginia Mountaineers on Saturday. I'm sure that brought a smile to your face, but these teams like a Michigan State, for example, we saw a really good weekend in general for some of these other teams, like a North Carolina was able to get the job done, Duke was able to. It feels like those teams that maybe are like 5 through 12 are much more feisty than a lot of people want to give them credit for just like a week or two ago.
I would agree with that, Greg. I think there's a lot of parity. The Vanderbilt and Nebraska stories continue to be some of the best ones out there. Nebraska rallying the way that they did against Indiana was unbelievable. I honestly thought when they were down 16, I kind of stopped monitoring it for the most part, and then I look up and they're tied. They continue to fight. Vanderbilt continues to be a wagon. They got a couple road games coming up, so we'll see if they can stay unscathed. And I think Houston's flying a little bit under the radar, Greg, now. They took that early loss in Vegas to Tennessee, kind of like they did last year, but it seems like they found their identity. I think Purdue's found their identity as well. Those teams that took an early loss, UConn as well, are really rolling.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that Houston versus Baylor game from Saturday, as Ryan McIntire does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, because with Baylor, I think that that's one of those things where two things can be true. Houston is flying under the radar. It feels like they have found that mojo once again. But man, Baylor signs James Nanji, the former 31st overall pick. He's done a big giant nothing burger, and it feels like we're really making too much on these G League guys. Like, I'm outraged that they're able to play the sport, but all these guys are making like no impact whatsoever, and it feels like these teams that are bringing them in have begun to get very much overvalued when they're just not contributing much.
And I think it's a little bit of a distraction and puts a target on your back, to your point. He hasn't done anything. They got dominated on the glass. He got dominated with physicality.
He's not even in the starting lineup.
I know. It's remarkable. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that we are overvaluing them a little bit. Probably just look to fade Baylor till further notice, to be honest.
Yeah, and how much do you think that it is causing Baylor to just be out of sorts with regards to their style? Because Baylor, they need to pick up someone because they had a lack of depth. I go back to that D2 game that they played, and they were unable to bring anyone off the bench, even though they were up 60 points, because they just didn't have fresh bodies. So they needed someone, but it just feels like Nanji doesn't necessarily fit the system. And for Scott Drew, it feels like he's working with a lot of pieces that aren't necessarily the guys that he's used to.
I thought that they kind of struggled with their identity before they added him as well. So Baylor kind of has struggled over the last couple of years. Last year, they were explosive offensively, but terrible defensively. They tried to be more of a defensive team this year, but they've struggled on that end of the floor too. Baylor's got a lot of work cut out. They better start winning some games, or they're going to miss their first NCAA tournament under Scott Drew in quite a while.
Yep, I agree with you. As Ryan McIntire does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that with regards to the Big 12, right now, your top two teams, they seem to be very, very set in stone right now. Arizona, along with Iowa State, two of the top three teams in all of college basketball. When the next poll comes out, they probably should be 1 and 2. But I mean, how do you take a look at the rest of the conference? Because I mentioned it with Kansas, they take a loss to West Virginia, and really, they should have lost a game to TCU as well. But I did take a look at the rest of the Big 12, and for BYU, it's been a really good start to the season for them. After a rough start to the season, it feels like Texas Tech is starting to figure this out, and we're doing this prior to the game for Central Florida against Cincinnati, but it feels like Central Florida is one of those teams that could be able to wreck the apple cart, and I really like what I'm seeing out of them.
We'll see what Colorado can do. I think that the middle tier is kind of shaping itself up. TCU has been chippy. West Virginia and UCF are kind of in that next year with Colorado as well. Cincinnati's been a big disappointment per usual. And Kansas State has been another disappointment here, Greg.
Yep, it certainly has been. And unfortunately, we don't have those Big 12 games on Monday this week. Really, we've got no power conference games that are going to be going down on Monday. So, going to be
what a shame.
I know, I'm right there with you. And I do wish so many of these teams will be putting more of their games on Sunday and Monday. I know that this is something that you and Kobe Dant have talked about a lot as well. Just how difficult is it to be taking a look at so many of these games on a Saturday where you've got 100 million billion of them, being able to prepare that. And then on Sunday and Monday, we've got a big giant lull before things pick up once again on Tuesday.
It drives me insane, Greg. I feel like we're beating a dead horse every single time. I don't get it. I don't get the non-creativity of some of these leagues. You want to get your product in the spotlight here, and bearing it at 2, 3, 4 o'clock on a Saturday where there's 30, 40 games just in that time window, yet alone 149 games for the whole day. You're just asking not to have your product seen.
Yep, I'm right there with you because, I could only imagine what a conference, even like the Missouri Valley Conference, for example, a rock-solid conference where they put a lot of their games on Saturday. If they put them on Sunday, if they put them a little bit more on Monday, Missouri Valley Conference, they do have a few games that go down on Sunday, but if they could maybe space them out a little bit more, get away from the Saturday, they could be seen a little bit more. I do think that these conferences, they need to try to be able to break it up because even if we only had like 100 games on Saturday, which that's still a boatload of games, but you redistributed like 15, 20 games on Sunday, 15, 20 games on Monday, those teams with those 15 to 20 games, I think that everyone would benefit as well. So I think that that is something very much to take a look at. And Ryan, when it comes to the landscape of college basketball, we've talked about it. It does feel like that tier 2 is shaping up relatively solidly in college basketball. Things are really shaping up well in the Big 12 as well. But who's a team or two that for the next week or two you have your eye on? Whether that's a team that you feel like is on the come up, or maybe a team that you're looking to fade because they had a nice start to the season, but now they're coming back down to earth.
I think I kind of already teased it. I think the teams that lost a game early that weren't quote unquote in that elite category with Arizona and Michigan, I think Houston and UConn are really finding their stride because they had freshmen, they got healthy, they had some injuries in November. I'm going to keep looking to back Houston and UConn. UConn obviously playing in a league where they're just going to beat up on everybody just because they're by far the superior team. But Houston as well, we've seen what they've done in the Big 12. The way the game is officiated in the Big 12, they just let them play. It really benefits a team like Houston.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And how much do you want to take a look at these teams that, for lack of a better term, they go back to their roots? Like, I'm looking at a team like Cincinnati out there in the Big 12, and certainly I don't think that they're going to make the NCAA tournament. It's a disappointing year, but they were playing way too fast for their own good to start the year. We're going to see what happens on Sunday, but feels like they're slowing back down. It felt like Houston was just a little bit uncharacteristic to begin the season, but now they're getting back to it as well. Those are the sorts of teams I think present a lot of value this time of year. Teams that maybe were trying to make a little bit of change, they realize that it's not working out, and they go back to what has really been able to provide them a lot of value and has been able to provide them with wins.
It's really funny how that works. Like teams talk about how they want to play fast, open it up, but that's not really the identity of their program. And then once they get in a dogfight in league play, they go back to what they know best, and that's dragging the thing in the mud and trying to outwill teams and just win with culture and physicality. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think Cincinnati, them and Ohio State, it feels like, in the Big Ten just find ways to lose games, and that's why they've been on the wrong side of the bubble last couple of years. We'll see if they can right the ship here and get on the right side of these games coming down the stretch here in February and March.
Absolutely. And Ryan, it is going to be very interesting to see what we get moving forward. Unfortunately, not necessarily the most rambunctious card on Monday. If you like some Swack, Miak, and Patriot League, which, hey, we both do, it's going to be a lot of fun. But I know you're doing a great job breaking down all these games. You're getting set for what is going to be a tremendous title game in college football and so much more. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Absolutely, Greg. I always appreciate you having me on. You guys can go check me out at Moneyline_Mac, and then I'm over at the College Experience every single night. College hoops, college football, got it all. Appreciate you, Greg, as always, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Absolutely. I know that Ryan is hard at work on so many different fronts. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So a big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Member Week is here for pros at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off hundreds of items from tools and paint to kitchen and bath and more. Just in time to stock up for this year's jobs. Plus, earn 5 times the points on an eligible purchase. Shop member deals in-store and online from January 8th through the 14th. Still not a member? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help, you save. Point boosters subject to exclusions and more terms apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ryan McIntire, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @G_81. Typically, I go with the normal games on the Las Vegas rotation order first, and then the extra games. Every single game is on the extra games board. It is all small conference fair today, so that keeps things easy. We're going to be going in time order, so there we go. We start with 306-641, 306-642. Morgan State plays host to NC Central. NC Central a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Totals between 146.5 to 148.5. I set a total year of a 141.5. I like the under. You've got a Morgan State team that has been really slowing down in comparison to past years. They're outside the top 185 in terms of total possessions per game. This NC Central team, they are certainly not a blazer themselves. They're about 260th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and these are not two good offenses. NC Central right around about 337th in the country in terms of points per possession. You've got a Morgan State team that's right around about 339th, and I did set NC Central as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it now. NC Central is a little bit more of a top-heavy team, but I do like those two guys at the top. Gage Lattimore, 18.5 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 38% from 3. Corey Carvey, he's been able to supply 14 points, 7 rebounds, a block per contest. One, two guys on the roster that give you over 7.6 points per game, but Deontay Johnson is a good facilitator, 5.5 assists, 3 steals, only gives you about 6 points per contest. NC Central, they shoot as collective, just a hair above 30% from 3. That's been an issue, but Morgan State is a team that's looking to pile drive the ball down low, and they don't even execute there. Now, I will say this for Morgan State, they have not been the world's worst team in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line, but they get bludgeoned down low. They're outside the top 350 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 330 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, even though they look to take shots inside. You do have Alfred Worrell Jr. supplying 15 points, and they do have some size, a 7-footer in Christian Oliver, but he only gives the team 2.8 rebounds per game. Christian Meeks is able to supply about 6 points, 5 rebounds. NC Central is a team that is very much looking to dominate with regards to turnovers. The top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Morgan State outside the top 300 in terms of their ball security, so that's a little bit of an issue. On Morgan State, they put you on the free throw line, a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of free throws allowed on a per possession basis. You do have an NC Central team that they shoot about 73.3% at the free throw line. That's a top 150 mark in all of college basketball. Kalechi Ogagaro, hopefully I said that correct. He's been able to give this bunch as well, about 4.5 rebounds per game with Jonathan Dunn injured. That has been really coming up big for this team. And for this Morgan State team, I just don't think that you're going to be able to get enough out of the backcourt in this game, even with Rob Lawson being able to give you about 13.5 points per game. It's a team that as a whole shoots less than 30.5% from three-point range. Think that you get a slog of a game, so my total 141.5. I like the under with NC Central. 1 to 3 with them, made them 3.5 point favorite. 306-643, 306-644. Navy's on the road against American, and American is an underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. 138.5 to 139.5 is the total, and I like the under in this ordeal. I did set my total here at a 136, as you've got two teams that are looking to play very slowly. Now, it was interesting with this American team. Through like the first 5 or 6 games of the season, they were a top 60 team with regards to total possessions per game. After the last 2 years, they were outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. They're getting back to those slow routes, and Navy, they're 321st in terms of total possessions per game. American overall for the season turned 64th, but if you look since the beginning of the month of December, they've been outside the top 300 as well, so I do think that you get a little bit of a slog of a game here, and with this Navy team, they've been able to do a really good job with regards to their defense. They are 100th in the country in terms of rebound percentage, and American on the flip side has been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but what they do well in terms of generating turnovers, they leave to be desired on the boards. They are 344th in the country in terms of rebound percentage. Now for American, you have two nice scorers and Greg Jones along with Maiden Collins. They've been able to combine for 25 points per game. These two guys should have combined less than 25% from three-point range, so that's a bit of an issue. American as a whole, though, they do shoot about 34.5% from three-point range, country average, with Wyatt Nadesis being able to give you 9 points, shoots 42% from three. Jeff Spruce is able to shoot about 38% from the outside. Matt Mayock has a little bit of versatility as well, but this team is just getting dominated on the boards. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and they're not afraid to put you on the free throw line as well. This is one of those teams that will fail to generate turnovers, as they're a bottom 40 team in terms of free throws allowed on a per possession basis, and Navy does shoot 74.2% at the free throw line. It's a Navy team that has been a top 135 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Austin Benjini, best scorer in this game, 18 points, 4.5 assists, stealing per contest, shoots 47% from three-point range. Jordan Pennick has really stepped up, shooting 37.5% from three, and then Aiden Koa, 14 points, 10 rebounds, block per contest. Don Draper, no relation to Madman, 7 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2 steals per contest. This is a Navy team that they themselves are a top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They keep you off the free throw line. They themselves do a nice job getting into the charity stripe. So I do think that Navy goes out there, gets the job done in a game that I think is going to have a very low amount of possession. Set my line at 2, 1 to lay with Navy, and I'm in on the under, set my total at a 136, 306-645, 306-646. Bethune Cookman is going to be playing us a Southern, and Southern is a underdog here of 3.5 points. 150.5 to 151.5 is the total, and made a total of 156.5. I like the over, as you've got a Southern team that's very much looking to push tempo. They are currently clocking in 25th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and well, both of these teams have had their struggles on defense. You've got a Southern team that's 342nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Bethune Cookman is 348th, and for Bethune Cookman, initially I was not willing to take this number, but the reason why I did have to set them now as a 4.5 point favorite, the doctor's in the house. Dr. Bradley is back, and that is big. Now, only had like 7 points in his season debut against Grambling, but this is a guy that last year over at Arkansas Pine Bluff had 19.5 points, 7.5 boards. He led the country in free throw attempts per game. This is massive for them, so that is going to be able to help them out. You've been able to get some relatively good production all season long out of Ontario Morris, who maybe doesn't look like a top 40 recruit as of right now, but still has been able to deliver for this team in that neighborhood about 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And Bethune Cookman, overall for the season, they shoot about 34% from three. That includes their games against non-D1 foes. They're getting blown away on the glass. They're outside the top 300 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, as you've had Jacoby Heedy along with Quinton Heedy combined for about 8.5, 9 rebounds per game between the two of them. You do get about 27 points per game, and they both combined to shoot nearly 40% from three. So I do think that you get very much an up and down game with a Southern team that last year was one of the better teams in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And in their games against against non-Division I teams, they were actually very good in terms of generating those turnovers. Against D1 teams, not so much. And this is a Southern group that right now is 303rd in the country in terms of rebound percentage. So both of these teams are having their struggles there. And I do think that as conference play begins, you're going to have the Southern team do a better job in terms of generating turnovers. Currently top 150 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got Michael Jacobs, who's been the main headliner for this team with about 21 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. He shoots about 40% from three-point range, with Malik Abdulwald giving you about 7 boards, 12 points per game. So like what these guys are bringing to the table, and getting back to Jacobs, 20-plus points in 4 out of the last 5 games. Additionally, Cameron Broy is able to generate 2.5 steals per game, throws in their 9 points per game. And Southern as a whole, they do shoot 35% from 3. That's a top 175 mark in the country. They're also outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and in a tight spot. This is a Southern team that's only shooting about 67.9% of the free throw line, and we'll say with Dr. Bradley, even though he got to the free throw line frequently at Pine Bluff last year, shot less than 60% of the free throw line, so that does need to be kept in mind. But I do think that you get very much an up and down game, and with Bethune Cookman, their scoring just got more lethal with the Doctor. So set my line at 4.5. I'm willing to lay with Bethune Cookman, and on that over, set my total at 156.5. 3-6-6-47, 3-6-6-48. New Orleans is on the road against Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is a 1.5 point favorite. 143.5 to 144.5 is a total, and I mean a total of a 146. I like the over this, despite the fact that Southeast Louisiana is about 319th in the country in terms of points per possession and 328th in terms of total possessions per game. You have a New Orleans team that's very much looking to play up and down, about 130th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but it's a make it and take it sort of New Orleans team. 349th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Have a Southeast Louisiana team that's been solid in terms of generating turnovers. They're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and New Orleans outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. But even with that said, I'm going to be in on New Orleans on the money line. I did set them as the favorite of 2 points, mainly because New Orleans has a nice edge on the glass. 163rd in terms of rebound percentage. Southeast Louisiana 306th, and this Southeast Louisiana team can't hit water if they thought of a boat from 3-point range. Bottom 5 team in all of college basketball with their 3-point shooting percentage hovering right around about 27%. You do have a pair of guys that have been able to give you over 8 points per game in Jeremy Elise, lone double-figure scorer with 11.5 points, 2 assists. He shoots 6.7% from 3. Isaiah Gaines has not made a 3 all season. 9 points, 4.5, 5.5 rebounds per game. These are the lone 2 guys as well that give you over 3.3 rebounds per game. So there's not a lot of great going on here other than the fact that this team generates turnovers, and they sort of gamble for turnovers. They're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and while Colton Benson for this New Orleans team has cooled down a little bit, he's still one of the more underrated sharpshooters in all of college basketball. 34.5% 3-point shooter on volume, shoots 92% the free throw line, 15 points per game. Jacavian Buckley actually comes over from Southeast Louisiana, so no love lost here. 14 points, 5 assists, stealing at 5 rebounds per game, but I'm going back to New Orleans and the edge that they've got down low. Churchill Abis saw good minutes over at Wake Forest and DePaul in past seasons. About 6 points, 4.5 boards, block and a half per contest. MJ Thomas, over 8 rebounds per game. New Orleans should be able to do a nice job down low. This is a New Orleans squad that has also been relatively good with their interior defense. They've been a top 150 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's big against a Southeast Louisiana team that just quite frankly can't shoot it from 3-point range. New Orleans is outside the top 275 in terms of allowing second and third chances, and I do think that you might get some late game fouling here. New Orleans, they shoot 75.2% of the free throw line. That's a top 80 mark in all of college basketball. Southeast Louisiana outside the top 240, more around about 70%. So I did set New Orleans as a 2-point favorite. I like them here on the money line, and I'm in on the over semi-total at a 146. 3-6-6-49, 3-6-6-50. Incarnate Word is on the road against Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is a 8.5 point favorite. 138.5 is the total. Semi-total 139.5. I do like the over. Now you do have a pair of teams that are not really looking to push a lot of tempo over Stephen F. Austin right now in terms of total possessions per game. They're about 294th in all of college basketball. Incarnate Word is slower, 318th in the country with that regard. But Incarnate Word, they're going to let you have some relatively clean possessions in a road/core venue. They're outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And Incarnate Word is efficient on offense, not so efficient on defense. Incarnate Word, 261st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 125 team in terms of points per possession. And Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, they are 27th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But I'm going to be one to take the points with Incarnate Word. Word, mainly because for Stephen F. Austin, if this does come down to free throw shooting, my goodness, this team is absolutely terrible at the free throw line. 64.6%. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. This is despite the fact that you've got Lateef Patrick Jr. supplying for you about 16 points. He shoots 32% from three. And Stephen F. Austin is actually a good three-point shooting team. Like, they shoot 36.5% from three-point range as a collective. Top 75 mark in all of college basketball. They're okay with regards to their two-point shooting, and they've been really good with their defense. Top 75 team in terms of opponents' two-point and three-point shooting percentage. They are down with their turnovers. They're outside the top two in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but top 45 team in terms of fewest turnovers per possession on offense. Jared Colonel, 3 blocks per contest. He's been rock solid, but for Incarnate Word, I do think that their two-headed monster in the backcourt is going to be able to keep them going, as Davion Bailey, along Stephe combined for about 38.4 points per contest. Bailey shoots 37.5% from three. Stephe shoots 41% from the outside. Both shoot over 75% of the free throw line, with Stephe a steal and a half, 5 assists per contest. So these guys have been tremendous there. And Incarnate Word, top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And Incarnate Word is also doing a great job in terms of making the most out of their possessions by being able to grab second and third chances as well. In terms of offensive rebound percentage, Incarnate Word is a top 180 team here, and you do have a Stephen F. Austin team that's been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of grabbing second and third chances as well. They are 77th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage for this Incarnate Word team. They just really don't force the issue on defense, and they have been a team that's been outside the top 230 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. But even with that, you have Harold Woods, who's got a lot of versatility. He comes in from Northeastern, steal and a half, 7.5 rebounds, 8.5 points per contest. Jordan Pike, he stands right around about 6'6", 13 points, 6 boards. He's able to pop it a little bit from three-point range. And Harrison Reedy actually shoots 55% from three-point range. I don't think that that's going to be long-lasting. Jaden Williams has given them a big giant nothing burger. But again, with Stephen F. Austin, I do think that in a tight spot where they need to hit free throws to be able to cover this number, I don't think that they're going to be able to do so. I do think that Incarnate Word is efficient enough on offense, takes good enough care of the ball to be able to help you out with this over. So sub by total 139.5. Like the over, and I'm willing to take 8+ here with Incarnate Word. 306, 651, 306, 652. You've got Grambling. They're going to be on the road against Florida A&M. A&M is a home underdog of 2.5 points, 140.5 to 142.5 is the total. I like Grambling here. I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. Now, Grambling games involve a whole bunch of turnovers. As right now for Grambling, they are 357th in the country in terms of turnovers per possession on offense, but in a road/neutral court venue, 13th in terms of turnovers per possession generated. Florida A&M, they're cut from the same cloth. 350th in terms of turnovers per possession on offense, 80th in terms of turnovers generated per possession on defense. But for Florida A&M, they're not the same three-point shooting team, as they shoot as a collective just a hair above 30%, 272nd in the country. That goes on to 25.9% at home, and you just don't have a ton down low with this team, as you've had Micah Octave be able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game, but he's been banged up all season long, and that's pretty much a lone guy on the roster. It gives you over 5.1 rebounds per game. Tyler Shirley, he's been able to give you 11 points, pair of assists, 5 rebounds per game, and he's actually one of their better three-point shooters at about 34.5%. Jordan Chapman, he's one of the main holdovers from last season, and we've seen him take a little bit of a setback from last season, about 9 points per contest, shoots 35.5% from three-point range, but I do think that Grambling, a team that does rank in the top 150 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, they're going to be able to take advantage of a Florida A&M defense that just has been very, very lackluster, to say the least. They are one of those teams that is very much going to be gambling for turnovers. It's year number 1 under Charlie Ward, so they're looking to break in a new style. As for Florida A&M, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are currently 290th in all of college basketball. And even though this is a Grambling team that, yes, they do turn the ball over a ton, you've got a guy in Patrick Prairie, who he was actually the coach over at Florida A&M last year under very bad circumstances with regards to contract. Florida A&M getting back to them, 279th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for Curry, he brought one of his main guys with him from Florida A&M, Broderick Coffey, who's been tremendous. 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists per contest. From three-point, he shoots 46.5%. From three, you've got Jamal Mutalib, who's been able to shoot about 38% from the outside, 9.5 points per game. Antonio Munoz has been one of the better freshmen out there in the mid-major ranks, 2.5 assists, a steal, 13.5 points per game. Good active hands with this Grambling team, and Grambling does not allow you to be able to pop it from three. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from the inside. Now, Grambling is also a team as well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage, so that's not necessarily amazing, but you've got a Florida A&M team that they are right now with regards to their two-point shooting percentage well outside the top 3 in all of college basketball, and they shoot 63.6% at the free throw line. So if this comes down to free throws, that's not necessarily great. You've got a Florida A&M team that's very much looking to push tempo right now, 36th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Grambling mid-tempo at about 187th, and I do think that you get enough possessions here for the over, so by total 145.5, I like that over, and with Grambling, I'm willing to lay up to 5 with them. 306-653, 306-654. You've got South Carolina State. They're on the road against Coppin State, and this is a relative pick'em game that some places have South Carolina State as the 1.5 point favorite. Other places, Coppin State as a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. 143.5 to 144.5 is the total. I said South Carolina State as a 2 point favorite, so whether that be as a money line underdog or laying a point and a half, I am going to be in on South Carolina State. Two just absolutely grody teams, by the way. Like, man, this is a game where if you're watching this, you love college basketball, though. I will say for South Carolina State, if they do one thing okay, they're a top 140 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and for Coppin State, you don't have a single healthy guy that right now gives you at least 9 points per game. And for Coppin State, they are 360th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's not like South Carolina State's amazing. They're 355th, but it's a little bit better. And for South Carolina State, they've dealt with some injuries throughout the season. They had Cameron Clark, the transfer from Cal State Bakersfield, me for the Roadrunners, come back, give you about 8 points, 5 rebounds per game. They've been without Christopher Parker for about half the season. James Murrow dealt with a little bit of an injury. Murrow along with Parker both give you about 7 points per contest. Both of these guys should be out there on the floor. So I actually do think that South Carolina State might be a little bit better than their metrics would indicate. Now they shoot 62.5% at the free throw line. They're outside the top 350 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but it's not like this Coppin State team is doing anything great either. They have one guy on the roster right now that gives you over 8.3 points per game. That'd be DeMontre Hall, and he's been missing for the last 7 games. Khalil Horton, 8.3 points per contest, actually shoots 42% from 3-point range. He is pretty much the only guy other than Taj Thiwat, who gives you 5.5 points per game, that shoots about 33% from 3-point range. But I mean, you have nobody that is currently healthy right now that gives you over 4.2 rebounds per game. So South Carolina State has a nice edge there. You've got a Coppin State team that has been outside the top 330 in terms of their opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're the much worse team defensively. They are outside the top 350 in terms of ball security with about 15.5 turnovers per game. Like, it's bad across the board with both of these teams. Coppin State mid-tempo team about 178th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. South Carolina State more around about 109th, but I do think that with the injuries to South Carolina State, they're a little bit better than indicated, and I just don't think the Coppin State helps you out with this total. I set my total at a 142. I'm in on the under and with South Carolina State, whether that be as a money line underdog or a slim favorite, willing to lay with them, willing to lay up to 1.5 with them. 306-655, 306-656, you've got Prairie View, and they play Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff finds themselves as an underdog of 2.5 points. 164.5 to 167.5 is the total. I set a total year of a 171. I'm in on the over. Now, Prairie View played a little bit of a slog of a game over the weekend when they were facing off against Mississippi Valley State, but these are two teams that are absolutely looking to gun it. How about for Prairie View? 15th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, this Arkansas Pine Bluff team, they're clocking in at number 30, but you take a look at Pine Bluff in a road/neutral venue, that does go into the top 20, so both of these teams are going to look to move it, and both of these teams are not great with regards to their defense. You've got a pair of teams that are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, as you've got a Prairie View team that they just always gamble for turnovers. This team, once again, is pretty solid with regards to generating turnovers, especially at home. They're a top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but if they don't get that turnover, they're outside the top 340 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and they really do give it up from 3-point range. Teams from the outside against Prairie View shooting 38.5%. That is 353rd in all of college basketball, and you've got a Arkansas Pine Bluff team that they themselves not necessarily great in terms of guarding the 3-point line right now. They're allowing teams to shoot well above 35% from 3-point range as well, so both of these teams, I think, are going to be putting up points aplenty. And for Arkansas Pine Bluff, I did have to set them as the underdog of 5 points, despite the fact that you do have some nice, shall we say, top-end firepower. Keon Williams was the lead scorer over at Abilene Christian last year. He's come in, he's been able to give this team 17.5 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds, shoots 40% for 3. Jaquan Scott, he shoots 38% from the outside. And then Trayton Payton, he's been a guy that has been able to shoot about 45% for 3, 10 points per contest. So, I mean, those guys are pretty rock solid, but it's a very top-heavy team that just does not do a great job on the glass whatsoever. And then on the flip side, you got a Prairie View team that's way worse on the glass than Arkansas Pine Bluff, but they are a team that does a better job of generating turnovers. Arkansas Pine Bluff outside the top 300 with regards to our ball security, and Prairie View has one of the best scorers in all of college basketball. Tyrion Joseph, 23 points, 3 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Lance Williams has been a 44% three-point shooter. They've been without the Quinnipiac transfer in Doug Young for much of the season, so that has been hurting them quite a bit. Marcel Bryan is down with his rebounding from a season ago, but Corey Wells does a Wells job of being able to give you 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest. It's a Prairie View team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of getting to the free throw line. They're a top 40 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, and they're not half bad at the free throw line. They shoot 75.5% the charity stripe. That's a top 80 mark in all of college basketball. I think they give very much an up and down game where the interior defense is not going to be great, but I do think that the ability to generate turnovers for Prairie View is going to win out in a game that I think is going to be harebrained and crazy. I set my line at a 171 with regards to total in on the over, and with Prairie View, I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 306-657, 306-658. You've got Houston Christian on the road against Lamar, and Lamar finds themselves as a pretty mid-tier favorite here of 7.5 points. 134 to 134.5 is the total. Said Houston Christian as a 5.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Houston Christian, not quite the same team that they were a season ago, as they're really giving it up from three. They are 282nd in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and you have a Lamar team that leaves a lot to be desired from the outside as well. They're 290th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but I do think that you're going to get a big-time slug of a game. This Lamar team is currently 309th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Houston Christian is even slower. Houston Christian is right now clocking in right around about 350th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so neither of these teams are going to be looking to push any sort of tempo whatsoever. That's a big reason why I did set my total at a 133.5, so I will be in on that under. You do have a Houston Christian team that has dealt with an injury to their top scorer, Elijah Brooks, who was averaging 12.5 points per game, but Kylan Green has stepped up in the interim, 11.5 points, 5 assists, shoots about 33% from three. Houston Christian is outside the top 300 with their three-point shooting percentage at about 30.5%. About a country average team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, so they do an okay job on the inside. They don't get completely blown off the boards as well. They've been a top 275 team with regards to rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you do have a Lamar team that should still have a nice advantage on the glass, as for Lamar, this is a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They don't allow a lot of second and third chances in return. They're just not very efficient inside. They are outside the top 300 with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage. Top 100 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, with Rob Lee leading the way, 14.5 points, shoots 37.5% from three, and in a tight spot, it is a Lamar team that shoots about 70.5% at the free throw line, just a little bit below country average, but not too bad there. Ender Holyfield, who's saying 6'8", he's been able to give you about 14 points, 5.5 boards. He's able to shoot 35% from three, so you've got some relatively good versatility there. It's a Lamar team that has been very good in terms of generating turnovers as well. Top 100 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. Even though they give up a lot of open looks from three-point range, they don't give up a lot of looks in general from three-point range. Top 100 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the three-point line. So I do think that that's going to help out Lamar a little bit in this ordeal. And I do think that Lamar is able to get the win outright. But I do think that with Houston Christian, them being able to do as good of a job on the inside as they do, they're going to be able to hold up just enough to be able to cover this game. So I did set my line at a 5.5. I'm going to take 6+ here with Houston Christian. And I'm in on that under. I set my total at a 133.5. 306-659, 306-660. You've got Alabama State playing against Alcorn State, and Alcorn State is a pretty good-sized underdog here of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 150.5 is the total, and I set my line at 12.5. I'm willing to lay it with Alabama State. Alabama State entered in their game on Saturday against Jackson State, shooting about 34.2% from three. That was in all road or neutral court games as well. And they laid a big giant sinker against Jackson State, shooting 9.2% from three. I think that you're going to see some positivity with this. They face off against an Alcorn State team that it's year number one, or Jake Morton, who comes over from Florida State, and man, not good. 360th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 352nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, getting below torch on the glass, 359th in terms of their rebound percentage, bottom 10 team in the country in terms of getting to the free throw line, bottom 10 team in terms of their two-point shooting percentage, bottom 10 team in opponent's two-point shooting percentage, and right now you've got one guy in Shane Lancaster that gives you over 9 points per game, 11.5 points, throws in there a whole 1 rebound per game. It's actually shooting 57.5% from three, and the one thing that this Alcorn State team has actually been able to do a relatively solid job of is they're a pretty good three-point shooting team. They're 28th in the country, shooting 37.4% from three-point range, but this is an Alabama State team that they themselves, prior to that game on Saturday, they've been a top 150 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, and for this Alcorn State team, they just don't do a good job in terms of taking care of the ball. 360th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a a Alabama State team that they've been turning the ball over much more this year than they did a season ago. Last year, they were one of the best teams in the country in terms of taking care of the ball. They're down to about 237th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but for one, they're the better team on the glass, that is for sure. And for two, this has been a team that's been a pretty solid team in terms of generating turnovers, top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And for Alabama State, you really do have a nice two-headed monster that I like in the backcourt, as you've been able to get about 16.5 to 17 points per contest out of John Anderson, throws in there 3.5 assists. He only shoots about 31% from three. Micah Simpson, more around 14.5 points per game. He shoots 35% from three. They've dealt with the injury to Trey Miller, but you've had a lot of guys in the just absence of him be able to step up. Cam Polisi is able to give you 6.5 points, 5 boards, and Jacarius Steinbach. He is by far the best low post presence in this game with about 2.4 blocks per contest. It's an Alabama State team that is outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so that's been a little bit of a kryptonite for them. But this is also an Alabama State team that's been a top 225 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, with the way that they're able to generate turnovers and the way that I think that you're going to get very much an up and down game. Alabama State, they play at a pretty brisk pace. They're about 97th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got an Alcorn State team that they are really looking to take on that Florida State style. They've been pushing a lot of tempo. Alcorn State right now about 101st in terms of total possessions per game. I think you get plenty of points up on the board, so by total 162.5, so I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 12 here with Alabama State. 306-661, 306-662. You've got Maryland Eastern Shore, and they are going to be on the road against Norfolk State. Norfolk State does find themselves as a mid-tier favorite here, as you're laying 5.5 with them. 132.5 is the total. I said a total of a 124.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Neither of these teams are pushing any sort of tempo whatsoever. Norfolk State starting to be a little bit more of a mid-tempo team at about 235th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Maryland Eastern Shore, yeah, this is not a team that's going to be looking to push any sort of tempo whatsoever. 314th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Maryland Eastern Shore is not the world's worst offensive team. They just get absolutely nothing going on offense whatsoever. As a matter of fact, for this Maryland Eastern Shore team, they're about 200th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense. They're not doing the world's worst job there. They're okay at being able to guard the 3-point line, top 135 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. But for Maryland Eastern Shore, if you look at them in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, a nice hearty 356th. Now, that's not to say that Norfolk State is lighting the world on fire. They are 334th in the country. I did, though, set Norfolk State as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, mainly because for Norfolk State, you've got two guys in the backcourt that I really like. You've been able to get nearly 15 points per contest out of Elijah Jamison, throws in there 3 assists per contest, shoots about 33% from 3, and then Anthony Whitcomb, 38.5% 3-point shooter, 16.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. And for Norfolk State, they've been a top 150 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, leave themselves vulnerable on the inside, outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. But again, Maryland Eastern Shore just does not execute at all on offense. You've got Joseph Lucardo, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, throws in there about 4 boards, shoots 42% from 3, but the rest of the team is not shooting it well. They shoot as a collective 29.4% from 3-point. Maryland Eastern Shore, to their credit, they're a top 250 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. I think you could tell I'm trying to find nice things to say, but it's hard for them to be able to get those interior looks with just how sloppy they are with the ball. This team is currently 362nd in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, second worst in the country in a road/neutral court environment, and with how slowly they play, I think that this is going to be a massive slog of a game. Credit to Maryland Eastern Shore being a top 225 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so they're not doing a bad job there, but I do think that in the end, you're going to have yourself just a very, very bad game in terms of offense. I do think that Norfolk State is going to be able to do enough on the glass to be able to pull this one out, as they've been able to get about 4 rebounds, 5.5 points per contest out of Keontae Lewis, who comes over from Wagner. He's been rock solid. Devin Ellis is able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. In a tight spot, Norfolk State only shoots 65% of the free throw line. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're outside the top 330 with their own free throw shooting percentage, so both of these teams rough there. So Norfolk State is a 6.5 point favorite. One to lay up to 6 with them. And on the under, semi-total 124.5, 306-663, 306-664. You've got Howard playing us to Delaware State, and Delaware State finds themselves as a underdog here as you're catching 9.5 to 10.5 points. 130.5 to 132.5 is the total, and I do like the under, a semi-total at a 130.5. You've got a Howard team that typically likes to play up tempo, and typically they're good on offense, not so great on defense. It's Howard team has turned over a little bit of a new leaf now, 222nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, 101st in terms of points per possession allowed, top 150 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they are great at generating turnovers. This Howard team, 19th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and for Delaware State, they are not getting anything going on offense. They're 19th in terms of turnovers per possession on offense, they're 32nd in rebound percentage, they're 24th in 3-point shooting percentage, and Howard's still about country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage. That's about 214th in all of college basketball. Howard by far is the best player in this game. Bryce Harris, he's a dominator. He's able to give you 17.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists, steal and half per contest, shoots 35.5% from 3, and then you've got Osei Okoji along with Cam Gillis, who have been able to combine for 20 points per contest, both shoot 41+% from 3-point range. Both of these guys give you between about 3.5 to 4 boards per contest, and Cedric Taylor is a guy that has dealt with a lot of injury for Howard. They've gotten him back, and ever since he's been back in the fold, 11 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. That has been massive for him as a 6'7", little bit of a combo player, and Delaware State just doesn't have the guys to be able to match up. You've got Ponce James, who's been a Ponsation with about 14 points. He shoots 35.5% from 3, but his team also outside the top 360 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. As a matter of fact, if you take into account D1 and 91 games, 365th out of 365 teams, so I don't think that they're going to be able to do their part there, and this is a Delaware State team that's very much slowed themselves down from past seasons. In terms of total possessions per game, they check in 318th in all of college basketball. Now, they're not the world's worst team on the defensive glass, top 275 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Miles Webb has been able to give you about 9 points, 7 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a solid job there, but he's also the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 3.3 rebounds per game. I mean, it's just very barren in terms of what you got for Delaware State. They're not taking care of the ball. To the credit of Delaware State, they actually have been pretty good in terms of generating turnovers themselves, so I do think that this is a sloppy Joe sort of game, but it's a Delaware State team that they very much gamble for turnovers, so that's not something that you'd like to see as they're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Well, with regards to their turnovers generated on a per possession basis, this Delaware State team is checking in 15th in the country, so I think they get a very sloppy game. Set Howard as a 14.5 point favorite. I'm going to be 108. Set by total at a 130.5. I'm in on the under. 306, 665, 306, 666. You've got McNeese. They play us in Nichols, and Nichols is a double figure underdog here of 13.5 points. 147.5 is a total. I set my line at 14.5. Willing to lay up to 14 with McNeese. Now, this McNeese team is absolutely incredible with the way that they generate turnovers. Number 3 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and I have a Nichols team that's number 9, so you're going to have a lot of dead possessions in this game. Big reason why I like the under. I set my total at a 144.5. You have a Nichols team that is relatively mid-tempo, about 208th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Same goes for McNeese. McNeese starting to slow down a little bit more in conference play, 270th in the country prior to conference play, hovering more around about 230th, but for Nichols, this has been a team that's been all over the place with their offense. They're well outside the top 200 in terms of points per possession because they just don't do a lot with regards to the interior. They're outside the top 225 with their 2-point shooting percentage. Now you've had Jalik Dunkley along Jalen Surreals be able to combine for 28 points per contest. Reals shoots 41% from 3-point range. Dunkley is able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. And then Sincere Malone comes over from Eastern Illinois, 2 steals, 11 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Trey English has never really been a great outside shooter, but is give you about 3.5 assists, so 1.6 turnovers per game. But I do think that McNeese is just too good on defense in this case. This is a McNeese team that has a guy in Gawari Duels, a former top 50 recruit, not necessarily a dominant scorer with only about 8.5 points per contest, but 4.4 assists, pair of steals, and he gets the ball to DJ Turner-Richards, who shoots 41% from 3. Javon Garcia shoots 37.5% from the outside. Richards and Garcia, they combine for 21 points per contest. Larry Johnson, known out the former running back, 16 points, 5 boards. He's been rock solid with that regard as well, and it's a McNeese team that does a pretty good job in terms of executing on offense. Overall, they're not necessarily a team that's going to light the world on fire with their 3-point shooting, but this is a unit that has been 78th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. If you look at their home games and their home games only, so against more like competition, top 50 team with that regard. Nichols are down to about 192nd in all of college basketball with this regard. I do think that McNeese is going to be able to do a good job in terms of owning the boards as well, because you've been able to get some very good production out of Giannis Nadanja, who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards. You get a little bit over a block per contest. Jarrell Colbert as well, and I do think that with McNeese generating the turnovers that they do, it causes for a very sloppy game, and this McNeese team, both in the top 100 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, so made a total of 144.5, like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number here with McNeese. 306-667, 306-668, you've got UT Rio Grande Valley. They're going to be on the road against Northwestern State. Northwestern State, home underdogs of 2.5 to 3.5 points, 145 to 145.5 is the total. I said Grand Valley as a 5.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Northwestern State. They're a better team than what their rebound numbers would indicate. They're outside the top 3 in pretty much every single rebound set they're going to find. They were without Willie Williams for about half the season. Ever since he's come back, he's really been able to help this team out quite a bit, but it's still a Northwestern State team that's not great with regards to their offense, 263rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and you've got a UT Rio Grande Valley team that has been 261st in the country with this regard, but it is a Grand Valley team that has actually been much better with their offense when they've been away from home rather than at home. As a matter of fact, they're scoring nearly 7 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than away from home, and they become a top 175 team with regards to their scoring in a roadside-shoot court environment for this Grand Valley team. They're currently shooting 41.8% from three-point range away from home, and they go up against a Northwestern State team that is not doing the most savory of jobs of being able to guard the arc. Northwestern State 262nd in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Grand Valley team that has been a top 130 team with this regard as well, and for Grand Valley, they do have a pretty solid backcourt, in my opinion. You've got a guy, and I'm not even kidding on his name, named Always Right, who comes over from Rhode Island, and he has been Mr. Right for this team in terms of being able to dole out the ball. Only gives you about 5 points per contest, but 2.7 assists per game, and he gets the other guys like a Corey Cotton and Philip Brockovich going. Both of these guys have combined for about 24.5 points per contest between the two of them. They shoot 35% from three. You've got Marvin McGee shooting 41% from three-point. Kai Dixon, missing with a little bit of injury, has been hurting this team quite a bit. He's been out really over the last month or so. He was shooting over 40% from three as well. But on the flip side, for Northwestern State, it is a team that has been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of finding some solid looks from three-point range. Your main man in Micah Thomas has been able to supply 16 points from three-point. He shoots 38.5% per three. And Izzy Miles comes over from Charleston State, shooting 51% for three. We are going to see a little bit of a fall off there. But again, Williams, who I mentioned before, was out for the first 6 games due to injury. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 3.2 rebounds per game. Not that UT Rio Grande Valley is the Mona Lisa Vitos of being with the glass, but they're certainly better than that. And for this Northwestern State team, they're outside the top 3 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. For Northwestern State, to their credit, they shoot about 73.5% at the free throw line and in a pressure spot. This is a Grand Valley team that they're country average, shooting about 71.5% at the free throw line, but I do think that in the end, this Grand Valley team does find a way to be able to get the job done as they're much stronger on the inside. I did set my line at 5.5. Going to be willing to lay with Grand Valley. Recognize that both of these teams are outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game, but I do think that you get those late fells for the over sub. I total 147.5, so also in on the over 306, 669, 306, 670. Texas A&M Corpus Christi on the road against East Texas A&M. East Texas A&M home underdogs, so 4.5 points, 139.5 is the total. I made Corpus Christi the 5-point favorite, so not willing to go past 4.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 4.5. This is a Corpus Christi bunch that has been a pretty solid team with regards to their defense. They, in a roadside shoot court venue, allow teams to shoot about 32.5% from three-point range. That's been a top 175 mark in all of college basketball. And name of the game for this Corpus Christi team is really putting you under duress and being able to generate turnovers. So they do rival the Aggies a little bit with that regard, but for Corpus Christi, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, right now 87th in all of college basketball. And it's a Corpus Christi team that is not the slowest team in the world. They're not the fastest team in the world, 227th in terms of total possessions per game. And East Texas A&M, they themselves are a team that's been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. They're about 151st in the country, but at home that goes well outside the top 225, and East Texas A&M very much going to be looking to Ronnie Harrison, who comes over from Tarleton State, to be able to help get the offense going, as he has been pretty solid with about 15.5 points, 6 boards, shoots 38.5% from three-point range. And for the East Texas A&M team, if you include their games against non-D1 teams, they're about a country average team, shooting 34% from three-point range, but their games against non-D1 opponents have really warped their numbers, because if you take those out of the fold, they're about 249th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Texas A&M Corpus Christi, they themselves shoot a little bit less than 30% 38% from three-point range in a roadside-shoot-score venue. But here's the thing with Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They are very content to pile drive the ball down low. That has really been the moniker of this team, even going back to the Steve Lutz eras. For Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 19th in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point arc, and it's an East Texas A&M team that is well outside the top 10 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. You've got Vinny Singia along with Damian Garcia, who've been able to combine for about 19.5 points per contest. They both shoot above 38.5% from three, but outside of Garcia, you don't have anyone else on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. And for Corpus Christi, offense has really been able to get going ever since Nicholas Shunbayo, hopefully you got that correct, comes over from Denver, has been able to get healthy. He was missing for the first about 4 games of the season, 10.5 points, shoots 38.5% from three. And Corpus Christi, they are as a whole shooting about 34% from three if you include their non-D1 games, but they should be able to dominate the boards in this one with Sheldon Williams, give you about 7 boards, 11.5 points per game. No, not the guy that was playing for Duke once upon a time. He's probably out of eligibility, but in this day and age of college basketball, you don't know about that. But that said, with this Corpus Christi team, pretty solid in terms of being able to find a way to be able to get second and third chances. They've been inside the top 230 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and East Texas A&M just does not give themselves those second chances. 320th in the country with that regard. It is an East Texas A&M team that I think is going to lose battle down low. Now, if you've got trepidation with Corpus Christi, they do shoot 66.8%. The free throw line, that is well outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, but with the way that they knife the ball down low and generate turnovers, I do think that they get the job done. And I do think that the overall break free throws and the turnovers could cost you the over. I set my total at a 139. So at a 139.5 in on the under. And with Corpus Christi, I'm willing to lay up to a 4.5 with them. 306-671, 306-672. You've got Jackson State. They're on the road against Alabama A&M. A&M a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Total on this game, 140.5 to 142.5. And with Jackson State, I made them a 9.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay up with Alabama A&M. Now for Jackson State, I do feel like their metrics, them being outside the top 330 in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, a little bit of a result of playing one of the most brutal schedules that you can imagine, but they're still going to be blown away on the glass. You have really no size whatsoever on this team, only 2 guys on the roster that give you over 3.5 rebounds per game, and this is an Alabama A&M team that has been a relatively solid team down low. They're a top 110 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage in their home games and 107th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so that leads me to laying it here with Alabama A&M. They bring in Dante Jackson. He was a former coach over at Grambling, and he brought with him a lot of his guys. BJ Eason along James Graham are 2 of them. Graham gives you about 6.5 points per contest, and Eason, nice ancillary piece, 8.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and the top scorer in Kadavian Dozer, he was a part of that system last year as well. 14.5 points, 4 boards per contest. You got 2 teams that shoot pretty much identically from three-point range. Both of these teams hovering right around about 30.5% from 3. Alabama A&M, I think, is 274th, 275th with Jackson State, so they're both right there. But for Jackson State, you do have Deshaun Ruffin, who I would say is the best player in this game, 20 points, 4 assists, used to be a starter over at Ole Miss, so I need solid, shoots 34% from 3, and Jamie Mitchell shoots 38.5% from the outside. But again, you've got Dorian McMillan, who gives you about 4.5 rebounds per game, Dejon Thomason, who gives you about 4 boards per contest, and Thomas, he gives you less than 1 point per game. That's not necessarily great, to say the least. It's a Jackson State team that's outside the top 340 in terms of ball security. They don't generate a lot of turnovers in return, and this is a team that's currently outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and this is an Alabama A&M team that, while they're not necessarily amazing with regards to their three-point shooting or anything like that, this is a team that is very content to try to be able to win from within, to try to drive the ball down low, as they're a top 75 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line. Meanwhile, this is a Jackson State team that they're going to be very much looking to bomb from three-point range, as they take about 44% of their shots from three-point range, and they're just not really hitting those shots at about 31% if you include games against non-D1 teams. So I do think that Alabama A&M is going to be able to get the job done. I do think that Jackson State is going to be looking to push a little bit more tempo. They're about 96th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Alabama A&M, they're a more slow and control team at about 307. So circumstance where I did set a total here of a 143.5. I like the over. I do think that Alabama A&M takes it to a bad Jackson State defense, and I'm willing to lay up to 9 here with Alabama A&M, and wrap things up with 306-673, 306-674. Everyone's favorite Mississippi Valley State is going to be on the road against Texas Southern. Texas Southern is right now a 13.5 to a 14.5 point favorite. Totals between 141.5 to 145.5. I set my total 147.5. I like the over, and I set Mississippi Valley State as a 9.5 3.5-point underdog. Texas Southern has covered one spread this far this season, and I mean, say what you will about this Mississippi Valley State team being awful, because they are awful. They're 364th in terms of points on a per possession basis on offense, 361st in terms of points per possession allowed on defense. How much better is Texas Southern, though? 349th in terms of points per possession on offense, 355th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis on defense, and they've got no chemistry at all. There is not a single guy that has appeared in every game this year for Texas Southern. It's all sorts of injuries for this team. They can't shoot it from three-point range. They shoot less than 28.5% from three-point range. That's a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. Now, Troy Hupseed, he's good. He's going to be the best low post presence in this game. About 15 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. But they've been dealing with the injuries to Bryce Roberts, who I'm thinking that he should be good to go in this game. But still, he played 16 minutes in that last game against Arkansas Pine Bluff coming off of injury, and he had 0 points. So even if he plays, he's not going to be probably 100%. Cameron Patterson has been missing for darn near half the season. He has not appeared in a game in about a month. He was one of their top guys in the backcourt. It's a team that does not take care of the ball. They're outside the top 350 in terms of ball security. They're getting bludgeoned on the glass. So this is a Mississippi Valley State team that I think can hold in this game. Do I think that they're going to win the game? No. Again, this is a sad and pathetic Mississippi Valley State team, but they were dealing with an injury to their top rebounder, Daniel Mayfield. He returned over the weekend, and he's been able to average about 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game after missing 4 games. He is very welcome back, and they've dealt with injury to Sam Murray II as well. He's going to be out for this game. He's still going to remain out of the full. But Michael James is a very underrated player that gives you about 20 points, shoots 90% the free throw line, 35.5% from 3. Might be the best overall scorer in this game. Patrick Punch has been able to give you about 8 points per contest, pair of assists per game. Now, Mississippi Valley State, 17 turnovers per game. That is dead sinking last. In all of college basketball, they don't generate turnovers themselves. These are two teams that are absolute sieves on defense. These are two teams that do not take care of the ball on offense. But if you're trying to tell me that Texas Southern is 2 touchdowns better than Mississippi Valley State, I am going to say no. I set my line at 9.5. I'm willing to take the points here with Mississippi Valley State. Set my total 147.5. You've got a Mississippi Valley State team that's looking to push tempo. They are now back in the top 125 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, more around 82nd. Texas Southern 44th. So I think you get enough possessions for the over. Like the over, and I'm willing to take those points with Mississippi Valley State. And that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to our good friend Ryan McIntire of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm with you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day, so I will be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.